What's going on, everybody? Jared here with the Trifecta. So we have some news. Ty's not going to be able to make the show today. He has some personal stuff going on, and going forward, Ahmed is not going to be on the show simply for he just has a lot of going on in his life as well. But he is always going to be a part of our family. He's going to be a part of the show, so he'll always be with us. But I kind of wanted to give everyone a little bit of a background. For today, I am going to be introducing a potential new member of the Trifecta. He's new with Back Sports Page as well. And don't forget to follow Back Sports Page on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. You can find us on Spotify. You can find us on Apple Podcasts. Also, don't forget to go to www.backsportspage.com. Check out the great articles that are going up every day. But lo and behold, I am going to introduce Tommy, one of the newest members of Back Sports Page. Hey,
Yeah, how's
Tommy,
it
what's
going,
going
man?
on?
Doing good. How are you doing, man?
Uh, I'm doing excellent. So why don't you tell everybody about yourself?
Yeah, I live in Indiana. Graduated from Ball State just this past summer. Well, this past spring, I guess. Kind of crazy with everything going on. Graduated two majors, journalism and news, and then a minor in sports studies. And I just finished up an internship this past spring with Indy 11 professional soccer. I kind of helped manage their social media team and kind of worked with their content team and created, features and shot some videos and all that. So sports have been in my life for as long as I can remember. So getting a chance to work here on, and jumping on the podcast with you is definitely a dream come true.
Well, listen, it only gets better from here, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you got your foot in the door. You're on the show, so I mean, it only gets better. So tell everybody what do you, everyone knows my sports are football, basketball. Tell everybody what your sports are.
Yeah, I mean, if I had to choose the top two, it'd be football. I'm repping my Denver Broncos shirt here from Super Bowl 50.
Oh,
And yeah, in baseball, I'm a huge Tampa Bay Rays fan, so this year's gonna be a good one. It's hopefully, but I love basketball too. I more pay attention to it, kind of when the playoffs start, just because that's when I feel like it gets more interesting. Same thing with NHL, but I've kind of grown up. I played lacrosse, I played rugby, so I've kind of experienced watching a lot of different sports. So yeah.
you say the Broncos. I had to throw up the X, like get away, because I'm always gonna be bitter about the Panthers losing that Super Bowl. But no,
Hey man, we deserved it after
you did.
43-8. That was, trust me, there's nothing worse than seeing your team getting beat that bad because they got embarrassed that game.
Yeah, no, I fully agree with that. But yeah, so you mentioned baseball. So do you think we're actually going to see a baseball season? I know with basketball, kind of everyone's saying, the season's less and less likely at this point because a lot of players are opting out due to COVID. A lot of players are testing positive. So what are your thoughts? Like, are we going to have a baseball season?
I don't know. I want to say yes. I think they have a good plan in place, but I know a lot of fans aren't big on the whole 60 game kind of thing. I think you can make a kind of a case for the NBA because they're playing the 8 playing games, and there's teams that aren't going to be in there that, not that nobody wants to see. I mean, people want to see guys like Trey Young, but they're not going to be a part of a winning team that can make the playoffs. And they're already also continuing their season, so it makes sense to go from kind of trying to finish the regular season into the playoffs instead of having we're going to chop everything from an 162 game season, no all-star break. You have 1 month for a trade deadline, and you're playing 60 games, and you're only playing your division and the division opposite of you. So I think it'll work, but man, with I think a big domino fell. I think when a lot of the guys start opting out for the NBA, kind of people started to get a little worried, but it's not been that way with baseball. I think there's been, a few players here and there, but the rosters are so much different. But
Right.
when Buster Posey dropped out yesterday for the Giants, he's a pretty big player. I mean, he's not the player he used to be, but he's definitely a big name that a lot of people, you know, think about. So I'll be interested to see if more players will start dropping out, if more guys, big name guys like, Cole Hamels for the Braves or somebody like that could drop out and not want to be a part of it. So if more players start dropping out, then I could see a problem. But with the expanded roster, I think it'll be okay. But I guess we just have to wait and see.
I just miss sports so much, and at this point, I mean, if they showed live NASCAR every single day, I'd watch that. At this point,
I'll take anything I can get.
but you mentioned a player like Buster Posey, and like mentioning bigger name players. One of the so I want to touch upon your playing in the division comment in a second, but being a Red Sox fan or growing up in Boston, David Price just got traded to the Dodgers with Mookie Betts.
Yeah.
And David Price decided he wanted to sit out the season as well. He opted out.
Yeah.
So part of me was happy about that because it's like, like we traded him and you guys don't get him, basically. But I guess that's me being a little bit selfish. But you mentioned that you're a Tampa Bay Rays fan.
Yes,
And you mentioned that the 60-game season, the teams are playing only their division and then the division opposite of them. So how does Tampa kind of stand up to that? I mean, the Yankees are a powerhouse team. Obviously, the Red Sox don't have Mookie, so there's kind of a big asterisk next to them. But for the past, 3 years, they've been a powerhouse team. So how does Tampa Bay kind of stack up against that?
Well, I mean, I think, going with the whole Boston thing, what we talked about before the show is you can kind of always rely on Boston and New York to be good because they have the money. I mean, the Yankees just signed the Rays killer in the playoffs and Garrett Cole to a historically, large contract, and he's going to be their ace. And now the Rays have to face him, obviously, with a 60-game season, not as much, but it's going to be tough. It's definitely going to be tough. But I think the teams that will succeed the most in this 60-game season are teams that are deep. And you're using a full roster size. You have 60 dudes there. You're allowed to bring up guys from the taxi squad and allowed to, basically plug in and play guys. But for a team to have you have 9 starters now with the universal DH. If you can have 7 guys on your team who can hit against lefties and then 7 other dudes who can hit against righties, you're doing a really good job. And then to not only complement that with the 3-headed ace of Tyler Glasnow, Charlie Morton, and Blake Snell. Glasnow, one of the best pitchers before he got hurt last year, kind of led the league, the AL, and earned run average. Charlie Morton finished 3rd in the Cy Young voting, and Blake Snell is a former Cy Young winner, along with the deep bullpen. I think Tampa's going to have a really good season this year, but I also think there's a lot of teams that, with a 60-game season, they can make some noise. I mean, you look at last year's World Series as a winner after a 60-game season, the Nationals wouldn't have even been in the playoffs. So I think you'll see a lot of teams that'll just shock a lot of people here.
I really hope that's the case. And the reason I say this is, I mean, I can relate it to football. I can relate it to basketball. I can really kind of relate it to any sport. It's so often that for, whether it's 3, 4, 5 years consecutively, we kind of see the same group of teams always making the playoffs, right? And then occasionally that one like random team makes it and everyone is like, whoa, it being the Nationals last year. So it's exciting. I mean, I would love to see the Rays win it. I mean, I was telling you this before the show. One of my buddies and I were talking a couple of years ago when the Red Sox won like 112 or 116 games, whatever it was, and the Yankees won 103 or 102, however many that was. And like the Rays won like 90 something games and still missed the playoffs. And like that's an insane record.
Yeah.
Like that is absolutely insane.
And and to be able to like compete with guys like a Garrett Cole and have guys, who are making so much money. And then the most expensive player on the Rays is Charlie Morton making $15 million a year.
Right.
So, I mean, to be able to balance that with how much, the money differentiates between the two teams, I think it's just incredible. And that's why it's cool to see teams like, last year's AL wildcard was the Rays and the Athletics. To see them play against each other, 2 small market teams getting ready to, the winner's got to face the Astros and one of the best teams in the entire league. So I think it's really cool to see a team like that, make it to the playoffs. Helps that I'm a
fan. Yeah, no, I'm going to root for the Rays. I mean, obviously the Red Sox had their bit of a cheating scandal, and I can't support that. obviously I'm always going to love the Red Sox, but I'm going to be rooting for the the Toronto Blue Jays
Oh yeah.
um, for the season. I hope they come out. I mean, I love Vlad Guerrero Jr. I think that kid is going to be something special, especially if he follows in the footsteps of his dad, who he was incredible.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see. Now, you did mention to me before we started the show that you are planning on moving down to Tampa.
Yeah.
Um, so how do you feel about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers?
That's the hope. That's the hope right now. Um, Man, the Buccaneers are an interesting team this year, that's for sure. My little brother's a huge Buccaneers fan, so hopefully he's listening here. But I think they made one of the best signings in the entire league's history. I think Tom Brady is going to have one of his best years. And the reason I say that is because when you look at teams or you look at guys like Brady and like Peyton Manning, and when they had, there's always this talk about, these guys who come in and they can make everybody around them better. Rodgers is always good. Brady was always good at doing that with a lot of, nothing. Manning was the same way. And, look at 2013. Manning was stacked. He had Julius Thomas, Demaryius Thomas, Eric Decker. He had guys to throw to, and he broke the record for most passing yards and passing touchdowns in the season. Or look at the season where Brady had Moss. I mean, they almost went perfect. So I think when you put him with 2,000-yard receivers in Chris Godwin and Mike Evans, you draft Keyshawn Vaughn out of Vanderbilt this year. He's going to be a really good running back, I think, in that system. And then, I mean, you get Gronk. I mean, there's nothing better than watching Gronk play. I mean, the dude's a menace. I mean, he only started 11 games his last season and still had 600 yards and 3 touchdowns. So imagine him coming off a fully healthy, recovery period where he can get healthy over this past season up to now with Brady and a new system with Byron Leftwich as their offensive coordinator. I mean, we saw Jameis throw for 5,100 yards last year in that system. So imagine what a guy who can actually, take care of the ball is going to do in that system. So I think they'll be good. I think they got a lot of young players. I really like Shaq Barrett on defensive side, and of course you can't forget about Levante David. They just got Antoine Winfield Jr. out of Minnesota, free safety. So I think that they can give New Orleans a run for their money for the division. I don't know if they'll win it this year, but I really do think that this could be an exciting team to watch.
You sound basically just like me. I am so hyped about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Listen, I'm a Patriots fan. I'm going to preface with this. I shed a tear or two when Tom Brady left. I will admit, grown man cried, but whatever. But no, I think you are 100% correct. I think this is going to be one of Tom Brady's best years. If it is not his best, it'll definitely be up there. You hit the nail on the head. I mean, just every weapon he has around him, that offensive line they drafted to make a little bit better. It's just, to me, I don't see how they're going to lose. I mean, I don't, on paper, they are easily one of the strongest teams. Shameless plug real fast. I do a podcast with another Back Sports Page member, Ryan Stern. We do the Zero Technique podcast. We also have Clark Wood on there. And the other day we did our top 5 tight ends, and they asked me who my number 1 is. I said Rob Gronkowski. Listen, Rob is arguably the greatest tight end of all time.
Oh yeah, he's right up there. I think there's an argument. There's a few players that you can make an argument that a lot of people would be like, okay, that's fair enough.
Right. But no, Gronk is definitely up there. Whether he's number 1, number 2, number 3, that's still very impressive. They were like, why is he your number 1? Listen, what he does on the field is so incredible that it's outstanding that like people think he's not going to have a good year. First of all, he's going into a system with Tom Brady. So not only is he coming back healthy, he's coming back with his quarterback, right? It's in a new system that Gronk is either they're going to double team him every play because they don't want him catching the ball.
Yeah.
And that's going to free up Chris Godwin and Michael Evans, or you're going to be covering the other two guys, and Gronk is just going to get the ball. I mean, plus the thing that Gronk also has going for him, I don't think we're going to see the same numbers like we saw from him in New England, but the thing that Gronk really has going for him, which I think a lot of people don't realize right now, is Tampa Bay has another really solid tight end in OJ Howard.
They have two,
So,
yeah. And I mean,
yeah,
Cameron Brate behind him too,
right.
yeah.
So you take those three guys, you share the snap count. I mean, Gronk is huge. His hands are basically the size of my head.
Yeah.
So I don't see like he could catch anything. It's crazy. Plus he's tall. He has the height. He has the weight. Like he's built like a truck.
Yeah. And I mean, go ahead. My bad.
Oh no, I was just gonna say. So having that plus OJ Howard plus Cameron Brate being able to kind of mix all those guys up, run different formations, different play calls, you're never going to know what direction the ball's going, and it's going to throw so many people off. And I think that's one of the main reasons why Gronk is going to have a great year.
Yeah, and I mean, and if you look at Brady's history with tight ends, they had Benjamin Watson, and Benjamin Watson had some of his best years in New England. And we don't like to talk about Aaron Hernandez, but we know that Aaron Hernandez was very productive when he played. And so when you have that many weapons, I mean, you look at the games where Gronk was shut down, where the Patriots didn't play, and Denver is a very good example of that, because in their two AFC Championship matchups in 2013 and 2015, Denver did a really good job of keying in, put pressure on Brady, key in on Gronk, and then you have Chris Harris Jr., who at the time was one of the best slot corners in the game. He's locking up Wes Welker. Where's Brady going to go?
Right.
But like you said, you can put two dudes on Gronk, you can put two dudes on Evans or Godwin, and you're leaving somebody else open. And the Buccaneers love to run two tight end sets. They love to go five wide. And Gronk, because he's slimmed down, he hasn't played so much. I wouldn't be surprised if they line him up against, a big safety like out in the middle of a five wide set. And it's just going to be, I mean, like you said, when he is on the field, look out, because he's going to make some play. He's going to be either intimidating with that giant arm brace that he's got, or he's going to be just the old Gronk where he's just going to go up and dominate you the whole game. So I think it'll be really cool to see.
It's definitely going to be awesome, and I can't be like I said, I'm just so excited because as a Patriots fan, right, I will never understand why Patriots fans are mad at Brady. Everyone's Brady betrayed us, blah blah blah. What are you talking about? Brady gave us the best 20 years of our lives.
Yeah.
Literally 6 Super Bowls. However, like it's just Brady has gone to the Super Bowl for a higher percentage than Steph Curry makes 3-point shots. I think the math was something like the Patriots with Brady went to the Super Bowl like 47% of the time, and Steph Curry is like 3-point shot percentage like 43%, like something ridiculous like that.
Yeah,
it's like,
and I mean,
I just don't know how people can be mad at him.
Yeah, and I mean, like, despite whatever you feel about Tom Brady and his, the cheating scandal and all that stuff, and whatever his involvement's been in that, and just him as a person, some people just don't like him as a person. Like, that's fine, but you can't deny how good he's been. I mean, he's just been a model of consistency for since the day he took over for Bledsoe after that hit against New York. I mean, he's just been the guy where and the game's on the line, and you can't say this about a lot of guys. There's only a handful of guys that you can really say, like, the game's on the line, I want this man on my team to lead me down the field. And no matter who he's got, Kimbrel Tompkins caught a game winner against New Orleans on a last-second drive, I don't know, 5 years ago or something. Like, nobody remembers who Kimbrel Tompkins is. So it's like, whoever he's got on the team, he's going to shine in that moment. And so I think when you put him with a guy like Bruce Arians, who's shown that with Carson Palmer when he was old. Carson Palmer had some of his best years in Arizona with Andrew Luck at the beginning of his career. I mean, that first year when he took over for Pagano, I know they beat Green Bay in a really exciting game. This is the kind of offense that Brady wants to be in. And it's not that he didn't want to be in New England, but I mean, there was the whole rift between them. But this is the kind of team where it's like you look up and down the paper and it's just scary. They have pieces everywhere, players old and new that can really make an impact. And like we both agree, I think they could be a surprising team this year.
You brought up a good point about the rift between the Patriots and Tom Brady, and how they handled his free agency is nothing less than disgusting.
Yeah.
Tom Brady, for 20 years, literally said, I'll take pay cuts so we can sign other players.
Yeah.
Right? Sure, fine. Whoever they signed, they succeeded with. Hey, puppy. Yeah. Whoever they signed, they succeeded with. And the crazy thing is the 1 year he asks for money, they say no.
Yeah.
It's like, come on.
And I mean, going with that is like, we're talking about the whole thing with the Patrick Mahomes thing is like, yes, Patrick Mahomes coming off like, he's had two of the best years to ever start an NFL career, I think, that anybody's ever seen. I mean, he's been absolutely incredible. But year in and year out, there is a handful of dudes, especially in the 2010s, that you knew were the guys. And I think that the top two were Rodgers and Brady. And Brady's never really been paid like the top guy of the league, which a lot of people know that he is, whether they like him or not. And so, like, for him to do that, constantly take pay cuts so they can get guys, bring the McCourty brothers, put them together, get a guy like Stephon Gilmore, bring a guy like Dante Hightower, and continue to keep signing him. I think, like, I agree with you. I think the way that they handled it, despite the riff, like, whatever, they want to, go prove that they can win without each other. Like, that's fine. But I mean, they were, you don't think of coaches and quarterbacks the way you do. I mean, there may be, a couple. Walsh and Montana maybe is the only kind of comparison that I can think of, guys who just like peas in a pod. They work together. And so, like you said, the way they handled it just didn't sit well as an NFL fan.
Right. And I mean, you bring up a great point. It's like the rift, whatever. It's like any relationship, whether it's personal, professional. If you are with somebody for that long, of course you guys are going to argue. Of course there are going to be differences. It's natural. They are people. Yeah. I think a lot of just a lot of fans of athletes in general tend to forget that these athletes are just human. Yeah. They go through the same things we go through, right? And it's nice to see. It's just nice to know that Brady is now in a situation where he's going to succeed, which is also very nice because that gives Cam Newton the chance to succeed.
Yeah, yes, it does.
I mean, listen, you can go back as far as April and you can listen to me talk about Cam Newton's coming to the pass. Cam Newton's coming to the pass. The second they were like, Brady's gone, Cam Newton's on the trade block, I was like, this is happening.
Yeah.
No question. I fully expect Cam to be in a New England uniform. And I'm going to tell you, yesterday I ordered my Cam Newton Patriots jersey.
There you go.
So it's like, for me, it's just so exciting because I get to watch my favorite quarterback of all time, and Tom Brady, and my other favorite quarterback, Cam Newton, both succeed in systems that benefit them, right? Yeah. The Patriots are Cam's best chance of succeeding.
Yeah.
Tampa's Tom's best chance of proving. I don't need Belichick. Yeah. And so it's so exciting, and I can't, but I need sports, man.
No, I'm right there with you. I'm definitely right there with you.
But
we're close.
We are. We're very close. But you did bring up Patrick Mahomes' contract.
Yes.
So I think the final number was that if he hits every single incentive over the course of the 10 years, he can make $507 million. That's baseball money.
Yeah.
Like that's insane. I have never heard of an NFL contract going nearly that high. And I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know of any that have ever broken even 300 million. I mean, I could be wrong.
I don't think that's the. I think that is the highest contract in professional sports.
I think it might be.
I know Trout signed something that was in the 400s, but
Yep.
I mean,
think
Trout is the number one guy in baseball, so I mean, he deserves it.
Trout is arguably the greatest baseball player of all time, anyway.
Yeah.
Like I'm talking like back Babe Ruth era. Like Trout, in my opinion, is arguably the greatest.
And the stats back it up. The stats really do back it up.
They do, but the crazy thing to me is like Patrick Mahomes. He just had his 3rd year in the NFL. Granted, he tied Peyton Manning's 50 touchdown record.
Yeah.
He had over 5,000 yards. His first year as a starter. That is crazy. And then, like, to me, it's absolutely ridiculous that he had an off season and he still threw over 3,000 yards. I think it was like 30 something touchdowns in that like range. And I'm just like, this is an off year for him.
Yeah.
And this is an amazing year for anybody else.
Yeah, exactly. And I know like when, I watch all the Broncos games. So Denver played Kansas City, and I remember, I'm pretty sure it was Monday night, and you could just hear the crowd just going, "Oh no," right when he gets hit. And it's just like, this is crazy. Like, here goes everything. Like, we had this MVP player who's playing at an MVP level this year, and now he's going to get hurt. For him to come back and play at that level, and I mean, to play as well as he did in the Super Bowl, the 2 interceptions weren't the best. I think, and he'll be the first to tell you, because that's just his attitude. There's more that he can work on. But man, some of the stuff he can do is just, as much as it hurts to see it happen against the Broncos, like the left-handed pass, the dump-off pass, or the throw to Tyreek Hill against Baltimore that saved them the game on 4th down. Like, the man can just do some incredible things. And I think it's crazy because Cliff Kingsbury, his coach at Texas Tech, said that he was going to be the highest paid player in the league by the time his contract's up. His contract's not even up, and he signs a new contract, and he's the best player in the league. So, I mean, it's crazy.
You missed one important part about, his injury and like his play.
Yeah.
He went down with a dislocated knee.
Yeah.
And 3 weeks later, 3 weeks, is back playing at MVP level. Yeah. That is unheard of. If I dislocated my knee, if you dislocated your knee, if anybody dislocates their knee, they're out 2-3 months.
Yeah.
Not Patrick Mahomes, out 3 weeks, and he's playing MVP level and then goes and wins the Super Bowl.
And I mean, that shows how well Kansas City was built, who could come in and win them games that they needed to with a backup quarterback. They had Tyrann Mathieu, and obviously we can talk about Travis Kelce and Sammy Watkins and Damian Williams. They have the pieces there, but I mean, going back to Brady and the pieces, I mean, geez, man, Mahomes looks like he could be better than Brady, as much as that probably hurts to hear for you. But I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. The amount of talent that they have, and the contract kind of, it's not a risk, but I definitely think that's a lot of money to throw at somebody. But
yeah,
he's proven that he's, for the first 2 years, he's at least proven that he's something different. So it'll be interesting to see how he plays out.
I don't think he's necessarily going to be better than Brady, but I think he is going to be in the discussion of one of the greatest of all times.
Yeah.
Obviously, I will retract that statement when he wins a 7th Super Bowl.
Yeah,
but I mean, he's definitely going to be in the conversation of greatest of all time. And I mean, to think about that though, right, is you have people, Aaron Rodgers is the GOAT, Drew Brees is the GOAT. Those guys only won 1 Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And I mean, they're getting old, and now they're coming towards the end of the career, whether Drew Brees has 1 year or 2 years left. Same thing with Aaron Rodgers. Obviously, Brady only has 2 years left. Patrick Mahomes has 10 years, and he already has a ring.
Yeah.
So it's like, he is obviously going to be better than Brees. I think he's already better than Drew Brees. I think he's already better than Aaron Rodgers. It's just a matter of, can he stay consistent, right?
Yeah.
And the thing that excited me the most about Patrick Mahomes is we see this with a lot of young rookie quarterbacks, the young sophomore quarterbacks, is we always see that fall off. right? So is 3,000 yards and 30 touchdowns really his fall off? Because
Yeah.
if it is, that's the most incredible fall off I've ever seen.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
take a look at Dak Prescott. I mean, the his rookie year, he comes in and leads the Cowboys to 15-1. Obviously, they lost in the playoffs, but um, and then his sophomore year and every year after that, he's only been decent at best.
Yeah.
And this dude's looking for $40 million a year. Come on,
Yeah.
it's like honestly, I don't even think Patrick Mahomes asked for this money. I think Kansas just went to him and said, "We're going to give you this. Do you want it?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Basically gave him a blank check and just said, we'll
Put a
give you
number."
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
It'll be interesting.
it's going to be a lot of fun, and I hope that it doesn't turn around to bite them in the butt. I mean, the issue that I see is going to happen is there's going to be that divide between they're paying him too much so they don't have enough to pay for other pieces.
Yeah.
Unless they draft like gods every single year.
Yeah.
But I also don't see that happening because I think the team is going to be too good to get any of those high end draft picks. But then, I mean, obviously the team's not stupid, right? They're able to go to the Super Bowl. They're able to go deep in the playoffs the past 3 or 4 years. So do they trade their pieces before their contracts up for second and third round picks? You know what I mean? So it's like there's a lot of question marks around the Chiefs for me right now.
Yeah.
But I do see this working out in Patrick Mahomes' favor. I see this working out in the Chiefs' favor. I mean, once he got paid, I mean, he posted, "I want to start a dynasty,"
Yeah.
and so it's exciting.
Yeah, and I think like the thing is you're talking about his age is he's 24. We're seeing a
Yeah.
lot of quarterbacks play until they're 40. And I mean like if he could go in every year and give him what his drop off year was, they'd be ecstatic. They have pieces everywhere to where that's good enough. I mean, they just drafted Edwards-Helaire out of LSU for another piece to put in the backfield. So I think, he could really have a season that will go, or not a season, but a career that will be talked about for a long, long time. And like the same thing with what we were talking about with what you're talking about the money. The one thing that puts the NFL away from the MLB is there's a set cap space. You have
Right.
a set amount of money that you can give to your players, and so we may see them get rid of. They just tagged Chris Jones. We may see them get rid of him for some picks or for some youth to just add in some more depth. And I think we're seeing that with a team like Cleveland. They brought in Austin Hooper and they drafted Harrison Bryant out of FAU to go with David Njoku. So now they have a really deep tight end group. It's all about getting as much depth as you can for as cheap as you can make it. And so I think Kansas City is going to run into a few problems. They might have to get rid of guys like, you know, Kendall Fuller or even a Tyron Matthew down the line. So we'll see how they can work with that.
I absolutely adore Tyron Matthew, so I'd hate to see him leave. I like him in Kansas City.
Definitely.
But you do bring up a good point. But the one thing you mentioned is David Njoku on the Browns. He requested a trade.
Yes, he did.
And as fitting as it is, I could see him going to New England.
I think if he does get traded, I think he will. I think New England's a good spot, but I just don't see with the value that he brings for how cheap that they have him. I just don't see Cleveland getting rid of him. You have a lot of these guys that are signing teams are picking up 5th-year options, but they're doing it in these players' 4th years, and so they have an extra year to play. And when you have a guy like Njoku who's making around $2.4 million a year, I think, or maybe I have the numbers switched, maybe it's 4.2, but he's making a small amount of change for what he brings to the team. But he had an injury marred season last year. He wasn't very productive for a guy like who's gonna have you trade for him, he's gonna have to get paid in a year. I don't know how much you can get for a trade, so I'd be surprised if Cleveland gets rid of him. But definitely, no, I think New England would be a perfect spot. I think he would obviously be an upgrade over Matt Lacoste. They're tied in there now, so we'll see how things go. I mean, it'll be interesting to see what Belichick has up his sleeve to keep the team contending because New England's going to find a way to contend. It's just who they are.
And that's the one thing that a lot of people tend to forget is that the common phrase we have here is um, just like you see on money and whatever, trust in God. We have trust in Bill here.
Yeah.
Trust in Bill. So I mean, I trust him, and I think obviously we're gonna see it. And I'm gonna put my kind of what I think this season is for the Patriots. Um, Obviously, I'd love to see Njoku come. I think he'd be a perfect piece.
Yeah.
But this season isn't about winning a Super Bowl. That's not
Oh
what
yeah.
this is. For the Patriots, this is saying, we brought you in, Cam. Are you healthy?
Yeah.
If they win 9 games, 10 games, they chalk that up as a win. They say Cam's healthy, he's good to go. Now we have $94.2 million in cap space next season. Let's go out and just put that all around him in pieces.
Yeah.
And that's when they go, oh, well, not only do they now have arguably the best defense in the NFL, now they have a top 10 quarterback in Cam Newton healthy, and now they have all these weapons for him. Come on.
Yeah.
That's what I think the Patriots are doing. I don't think their goal is to really win this season. I think it's just for Cam to prove himself that he
Yeah.
still has it in him.
I,
But go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I think it's gonna be tough for New England to retain him. I think no matter what he does, I think I know you mentioned on the last show, if he doesn't do good, they obviously have enough confidence in Jarrett Stidham to want to roll him out before they made this move. So I think they'd be okay with rolling him out and then having Hoyer back behind him. But I also think, if he has a good season, if he wins comeback player of the year, he's back to super cam, or what is kind of mirrors what his 2015 MVP season was like. I think teams are going to line up to pay him, and I just don't think, you mentioned on the last show that Belichick's not known to fork out the big bucks for big name players. He's okay with letting you walk away. We just saw him let go of Kyle Van Noy. Actually, a few players went that way down to Miami with Brian Flores. So I think we'll see if Cam stays. It will be a really good investment if they do. If they can get him on a good deal where he's not, where you can get solid production out of him for decent quarterback market value, then you're obviously going to be winning the trade or winning the deal, and Belichick can stay around for a lot longer. But I think it'll be really tough to keep him around depending on the season.
Yes and no. So obviously, like you mentioned, I said on the last show, Pats aren't known for shelling out that large amount of money.
Yeah.
But the thing that I think might outweigh it is Cam Newton is very loyal.
Yeah.
He was heartbroken with how the situation ended with the Panthers. And so it's a lot of, I think it's going to boil down to he's going to want to remain loyal because this is the team that gave him his chance to prove himself.
Yeah.
There's a clause in his contract that allows him to be franchise tagged. So it wouldn't surprise me if Cam signs a franchise tag next year if he does well, right?
Yeah.
They say, hey, look, Cam, like we know you're healthy, we know you can move the ball, we know you can win, we know you bring a winning culture to the team, and you continue our name as a winning culture. Why don't you sign the franchise tag and we can use our money to bring in guys? I don't
Yeah.
see why Cam doesn't do that.
I think the only reason is because, the franchise tag, you got to pay at the highest market value for that player. So he might be making upwards of something that New England doesn't want to touch next year. And they also just franchise tagged David Andrews this past year. And while it normally doesn't happen, you don't get franchise tagged back-to-back years. I think he's one of those players that he's 24. New England would want to keep him. He's a good player. And of course, you'd rather have a good quarterback over a good offensive lineman. But again, going back to the whole Jarrett Stidham thing, if they didn't feel confident enough to go into the season with Stidham, then I think we'd be having a different conversation. But because they were at least shown to be somewhat confident with him, and then they get a good deal with Cam. Obviously, he's only making at the most what he could make, 7.5 million. So it allows them a lot of flexibility. So no, I could definitely see them franchise tagging him. It just depends, especially with Dak's the whole thing with Dak, wondering about if he's going to sign a tag this year, if he's going to play on a new contract or whatever. It'll be interesting to see what the market value is for next year.
I couldn't have said it better myself, but I mean, I'm holding out hope. Obviously, I would love to see Cam stay in New England. Maybe that's just me being selfish, but it's definitely a possibility. I think it's likely considering all the things. I think if he had remained healthy and he just a free agent, it could be a whole different conversation. But
Yeah.
it's the 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 thing is it's going to be a story to watch.
Yeah, and I think the cool thing is you look at McDaniel's history. He was the first guy who said, "I want Tebow." And yes, Tebow didn't turn out to be the best NFL player, but McDaniel's has shown that he works really well with guys who can move in the pocket. Look at Garoppolo. Look at the time with Brissett. They play well. Even Matt Castle, when he was there, played well. So I think with Newton, obviously he brings a whole nother aspect of the game that Tom Brady doesn't bring. So I think having that with Josh McDaniels will be a really good combination. Like you said, it'll be a good story to watch. I really would not be surprised if he comes back and wins comeback player of the year.
Yeah, I love Cam considering I don't even just love him for a from a football standpoint. I think just the type of person he is in his community, how much he gives back to everybody is just incredible. I mean, for I think it's about either 7 or 8 years now, he does something called Cam's Thanksgiving Jam, which he goes and he feeds underprivileged homeless kids and their families Thanksgiving dinners every year on Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And every year he's done more and more. 2 years ago he had, or 3 years ago, I'm sorry, he had like 500 kids. 2 years ago it was 800. This past year it was 1,200. Plus all their families, and he hangs out. He plays games with them, and I mean, I would love to see 2015, 2000 even 2000 even 17 or 18 Cam when before his injuries against the Steelers, where he was having a career year.
Yeah.
And the Panthers were 6-2,
Yeah.
and giving out the footballs to the kids in the stands. Like I think that is the coolest thing. And
No,
so
definitely.
I think that's another reason why I want to root for him. I want him to see him succeed. But I do need to ask you something. It's quite a bit off topic.
Okay.
But if you watch the first episode of the Trifecta or listen to it, Tyrone, myself, and Ahmed, we did our Mount Rushmore of athletes of all time. Some of the guys that were mentioned between all of them. For me, I had Steph Curry up there. I had Derek Jeter. I have Tiger Woods, LeBron James. I have those guys up there in the conversation. Tyrone had Muhammad Ali. So, I mean, there's just so many different. Michael Jordan was obviously a name that was thrown out there. So, for you, if you had to pick 4 athletes across all sports to, I guess, put in your Mount Rushmore, who would they be and why?
Well, I think with first off, I'd have to go with Jordan. I mean, especially with The Last Dance releasing, I kind of got a lot more. See, I grew up. I was born '98, so I didn't really get to catch his career. I wasn't old enough to really care for when he played with the Wizards and stuff. But man, I'll tell you, when NBA 2K11 came out and they had the Jordan Challenge, and you could replay all the cool like Jordan moments, like the flu game and his shot over Craig Elo, and just so many cool moments that he's just that he's the best player on the court every time he steps on, no matter if it was Sean Kemp or John Starks or whoever was lining up across from him, or even they could have Elijah Wan or whoever. You knew that Michael Jordan was going to be the best player on that court, and I think that alone sets him apart. And I think that also moves into my next one, which would be Mike Tyson. And I know that's kind of an interesting one, but man, Mike Tyson was a killer. I mean, he literally was a madman in the ring. He would knock you out so quickly, and he did it without even caring. Obviously, the fighting the ear. kind of controversy that went on, and now he's talking about coming back and everything. I just think when you look at a guy who's that productive and that dominant for a good amount as he was, I don't know how he can't be on there. Geez, the next two are definitely going to be tough. I think this is another good one. I've always been a big fan of Pete Rose. Pete Rose is
Okay.
somebody that my dad and my older brother are both big fans of, and now we have, there's always going to be talk about whether he should be in the Hall of Fame, and it's again with the going back to the Brady thing. You can't have the Hall of Fame without one of the best players in it. I mean, he is the hit king. And like, yes, what he's done, for betting on his team and all of that, like that's fine. Like it's not the best thing, but it's a lot better than what a lot of other players did that are widely recognized. And I just think when you look at how hard he played, going back to the Cam Newton thing too, you talk about you want guys on your team who are going to put in the work day in and day out. And Pete Rose was that guy to where every game you knew you were going to get 110% from him, no matter what, whether it was a regular season game, a spring training game, or a postseason game, it didn't matter. Or even the All-Star game where he runs over the catcher. I mean, he's that dude to where he's going to give his heart every single time. Man, I got to throw in a football one because that's definitely my favorite sport. I'm going to go with oh man, I'm going to go with Sean Taylor.
Ooh.
Yeah, that's a
Good
tough
pick.
one.
Good pick.
That's a tough one, but man, I caught Sean Taylor's career towards the end as a kid, and that was right when I was really getting into football. And man, he was just something else. He was just something else. He could do everything that you wanted in a safety. Ball hawk, he could tackle, he could blitz, he could do man to man, he could play zone, he could do whatever you wanted. And he was arguably the best at doing that in the entire league. And it sucks what happened to him. I really do think if he would have been if what happened to him didn't happen, I really do think he would have been in the same conversation as a guy like Ronnie Lott as one of the best safeties of all time. So a little controversial there. A few picks that a lot of people wouldn't think, but yeah, I'd say that's my top four right there.
Listen, there is no judgment. It is your Mount Rushmore for your reason.
Yeah.
One of the guys in my Mount Rushmore, which a lot of people give me that same type of whoa, like why, is
Yeah.
Steph Curry. But I mean, Steph Curry literally changed the game of basketball as we know it.
Yeah.
Before Steph Curry was in the league, everyone's driving to the net. You go to any pickup basketball game at your local college or just any park, kids are driving, trying to get those cool layups, whatever it might be. And then you turn around, Steph Curry's in the league. Now you can't walk into a gym and see 20 kids jacking up threes.
Yeah, no, definitely.
And then, I mean, it also changed how the game had to be played. And it made way for guys like a James Harden who aren't specifically great on defense, but can hit those deep threes. It's just Steph Curry alone single-handedly changed the game of basketball.
Yeah, and I think a good comparison to that, I don't know if you're a big fan of ESPN 30 for 30s, but I think they're absolutely amazing. But the home run rates between McGuire and Sosa, they just did an episode on that. That changed baseball.
Right.
Baseball numbers were going down. People just weren't interested. And then you have this race over the summer of baseball, and it's just like, yo, is somebody going to break Roger Maris's record? Obviously, they both end up catching it, and McGuire finishes the season in the lead until Bonds annihilates it a few years later. But that is what got people back into baseball. And now you see with basketball, you see viewership numbers are up, pace of play numbers are a lot quicker, teams are scoring at a lot higher rates. You're having more exciting games because you have guys like Curry or Klay Thompson, his teammate, or as you said, James Harden, just guys who are just drilling threes that, if you would have thought of 20 years ago, there may have been one or two dudes who could attempt that in a game and they'd be like, they wouldn't be sent to the bench right after.
Right.
But Curry's pulling up from midcourt every 5 minutes. So I think, no, I definitely agree. I definitely think he changed the game for the better.
I might as well just give you my top four, and then I could tell you one of the guys that Tyrone had on his, which I thought was interesting. So one of my other guys on my Mount Rushmore is LeBron James.
Of course.
Um, LeBron James got the spot over MJ because of just how many people idolize him.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with me thinking LeBron James is better or worse. It's just LeBron is considered the GOAT. There are so many people who look up to him, but it goes beyond that. It goes beyond what he does on the court. It has to do a lot with what he does off the court.
Yeah.
He just, opening his own school in Akron, Ohio, and then all the kids that graduate get a full ride scholarship to college. It's just absolutely incredible. So that's why he's up there for me. I mean, I could list reason after reason.
Yeah.
Another one for me is Tiger Woods. Tiger Woods is the definition of resilience. He faced a lot of struggles of about 9-10 years ago, or however many years ago it was, with the whole thing with his addiction and the whole thing with cheating on his wife and stuff like that, getting kicked out of the league, and then he comes back. In the same year he comes back, he wins the Masters. He has the most Masters wins out of anybody. It's just Tiger Woods is the definition of consistency and resiliency, and even if you don't watch golf, he brought an aspect to it that was exciting to watch. You could turn on Tiger and be excited to watch him drive the ball, sink those putts, and so that was something you don't get out of golf.
Yeah.
And then lastly is Roger Federer. I personally, I like tennis. I know a little bit about it. I love Roger Federer. Obviously, even if you don't know tennis, you know his name. But he is interchangeable for me. Last time I gave my Mount Rushmore, there was actually a duo that was on my Mount Rushmore, and it's the Williams sisters.
Hey, there you go. That's a good choice.
Again, Venus and Serena Williams absolutely changed the game of tennis. They changed women's sports and history. They just are, again, even if you don't watch tennis, even if you know literally nothing about it, you know who Venus and Serena are. You know how dominant they are in the world of tennis.
Yeah.
And so those would be kind of my interchangeable choices of my Mount Rushmore. The one that Tyrone gave that I thought was incredible was Michael Phelps.
That is a very good one. That's one I didn't think about. Yeah.
Michael Phelps, in Tyrone's word, is a human fish.
Talk about consistency. There's
Right.
not much better you can do than that.
No, and so yeah, it's always fun to kind of have these discussions of a Mount Rushmore. Who's your athlete? Because you get to know the person a little bit better. You know what type of things they look for in a sport, and so I think that it's definitely a lot of fun. Now, you obviously, like you mentioned before, like I mentioned before the show, you're obviously new, so you listened to the latest episode of the Trifecta with me and Ty, and so he asked me a question that I'm going to ask you. Since you've been alive, since you started watching sports, what is the one moment in sports history that you've witnessed that is what like solidified your passion for sports?
Oh boy, that's a good one. I kind of have a tie, man, because they both happened in the same year, and it both kind of made me a bigger fan for both teams. I'm a Broncos fan and a Rays fan. So what happened in those years were just absolutely crazy. I got to start off with the Tim Tebow touchdown against the Pittsburgh Steelers in the AFC wildcard. I remember going in that game and I was like, there's no way. Like, they actually really win. And he averaged 31.6 yards a pass that game. They tie it up. They go into overtime. And I just remember sitting in my living room and he throws the quick slant to Demarius, and I'm just standing there and I'm like, no way. And then he gets to the 50, and the 30 and the 20, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like we're gonna actually do this. And he stiff arms Ike Taylor, and they win the game. They get obliterated against New England, but that's fine. But I mean, like, to see, like, for how crazy of a season that was for them to just go up and down and win so many crazy games on the strength of their defense, or just TiVo mania, or whatever they wanted to call it. Like, man, that was just so fulfilling as a Broncos fan. Like, to see him actually do it and pull it off when nobody said he could. And then my other one would be when the Rays hit Evan Longoria, probably one of my favorite players of all time,
Yep.
hit the game 162 home run over the left field wall in Tropicana to send the Rays to the playoffs. I mean, coming back from down, I think it was 7-0 at the time, like, just absolutely crazy for them to walk off and go to the playoffs in that season, and the situation that happened the prior month and everything. It's interesting, very cool moment as a fan.
I dig it. I was telling Tyrone about mine on the show last week. For those that didn't catch it, mine was the 2007 Celtics championship.
Yes.
For me, I mean, I played sports my whole life. I've obviously played sports before and after that happened, but I will recall the story. My mom used to work in a photography studio and a Babies R Us. It was about 8 o'clock at night or whatever, 9 o'clock at night. My mom was getting cleaned up, ready to go. And I remember I was watching it live on YouTube. They were streaming the Celtics game. And I remember when they won the championship, I kind of lost my mind. I was so excited. And so, I mean, that was the moment for me.
No, going in, didn't mean to interrupt you, but
No.
that was the team that got me into basketball. Actually, like, that was the team where I was like, I wasn't the biggest fan, but man, watching them play, and at the time I wasn't the biggest fan of the Lakers, because the Lakers are the Yankees of the NBA.
Right.
You don't like them because they're the best, and so, like, when Paul Pierce and Ray Allen and Kevin Garnett all got together, I was like, man, this is gonna be fun. And me and my brother would watch the finals. We'd watch their games, and man, it was. I feel like that's kind of like a reason where I have like a small, like, love for the Celtics still. I'm from Brownsburg, Indiana, which is where Gordon Hayward's from. So I get to watch him and stuff. So I definitely understand what you come from with that 2007-08 team.
Yeah, and that was what was crazy. Is like that was really what got me into basketball as well. And so, I mean, that's really it for me. Like, I couldn't be happier.
Yeah.
However, I hate to say this, but that's just about all the time we have. So, Tommy, again, tell everybody where they can find you. Tell them, again, a little bit about yourself. Tell them where they can find your work, stuff like that.
Yeah. So you can find me on my Twitter here, TommySmith1515. You can find some of my work there, and some of my Indy 11 stuff that I did with Indy 11 professional soccer. And yeah, hopefully I get to get the chance to work with you again, and hopefully get to do the podcast with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, guys, you can always find me on Twitter at journalistj0. Don't forget to check out Backsports Page, Facebook, YouTube, backsportspage.com. Check us out on Twitter. Check us out everywhere. You can catch the Trifecta on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. You can listen to all the other great podcasts that Backsports Page hosts on those platforms as well. So, everybody, thank you for watching, and we will see you next week.